15 minutes past the hour. It's a Wednesday morning. It's April 15, 2026. Great to be with you here on EWTN's Catholic Connection. Once a month, we visit with Julie and Greg Alexander from the amazing Alexander House, alexanderhouse.org. And today we're talking about marriage, mentorship, marriage disciples, and the call to serve. Now, Greg and Julie love speaking with you, as you know. It's interesting because when people hear the idea of help for marriage, they often think counseling. So sometimes it unfortunately has a stigma to it. You do approach it differently. So let's start here. There's a lot to talk about, but Greg, I'll go to you first. What's the difference between what you do and what people often think of as counseling?
Well, first of all, Teresa, I'll say that everybody doesn't need traditional counseling. A lot of times that's reserved for couples who may have some predisposed or pre-existing conditions, if you will, where there some deep pathological issues, some addictive behaviors and things of that nature. But for the most part, most couples are quote unquote healthy, and they just need to have someone to kind of walk with them to show them how to build and strengthen their marriage relationship. No different than any other coach in sports or anything else for that matter. You have an individual who has a heart and a desire to play the game, but they just need a coach to help them show them how to do it. And the same thing through marriage, especially in today's society, the different family of origins that people are coming from, they have not seen marriage properly modeled in their homes growing up. So they just need to have someone hold them by the hand, walk with them, pray with them, and to show them how it's done, especially in God's way.
So, Julie, can we revisit your story and the challenge you were given by a good holy priest?
No.
Okay, let's move on. Never mind.
No, she says that a lot of times because that question, for whatever reason, is always posed to me first. But I'm glad to hear that you're going to her. So
yes.
Can't wait to hear what she has to say.
She was there too, Greg. She was there.
Yeah, exactly. Greg was terrible, and he just finally woke up and saw Jesus, and we're good.
Yeah,
I'm
and that's the end of the story. Yeah.
We were so clueless, Teresa. It's that whole thing. You meet, you fall in love, you think the other one looks great, you like the music they listen to. We had a great, getting to know each other. How fun is that? But God was not the foundation. We didn't even know who he was. And so long story short, that just paved the way for a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of selfishness, a lot of ways of the world, and even to the point, Teresa, where we thought that we could no longer stay together. And we were going to get a divorce, called it quits, called our 2 kids into the room. The whole thing was just a tragedy, a train on the tracks of explosion, like a train wreck. Long story short is thanks be to God for a special priest that entered into our lives, and we wanted to get to know him. He was so on fire for the faith. We started to talk to him and tell him what was going on in our marriage. And what a blessing it was that he started asking us questions about, what is God's plan for marriage? Where does our church teach about the sacrament of marriage? And what are some of the writings of St. Paul and the various holy fathers pertaining to marriage? Unfortunately and sadly, we had no clue what he was saying. We didn't even know where to go to get the answers of the questions he asked. But by the grace of God, Greg did. I believe to this day the Holy Spirit entered into his heart, and he started reading, studying, going to the church's teachings, the Bible. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was like a transformation. I can even say a resurrection of something that was dead and came to life because we put Jesus in the middle of everything and started living our marriage the way God intended.
Wow. So, Greg, it's one thing to have that reversion for both of you and to heal your own marriage, but then you decided you needed to help others who were going through the same thing. At what point did that happen?
Yes, Teresa, we started going back to church, and we were asking our fellow friends and parishioners the same question that this priest was asking us. Hey, you know anything about God's plan for marriage? Is God present in your marriage relationship? Are you being an example to your kids as to what God love looks like? And kind of like us, we were getting the deer-in-the-headlight looks. And so we started doing these informal classes at our parish on God's plan for marriage. The director of religious education from another parish heard about the talks we were doing and called Julie and asked if we had a workshop. But Julie set us up for a workshop that we did not have. In fact, she came to me, hey, we have our first workshop on behalf of the Alexander House. I'm like, we don't even have a workshop. What are you talking about? She said, well, we have a date. You better come up with something. And so, Teresa, I just simply went back and just kind of outlined what did we do to get our marriage back on track. And so we started presenting the workshops, and Couples were coming up saying, wow, that was great. We learned a lot, but we need more individual attention. Do you work with couples? Mm-hmm. So I took a page out of Julie's book and said, of course we work with couples. When do you want to get together? And so that's what started our marriage discipling process. And again, just giving the couples what I felt the Holy Spirit gave me in those times of studies. And we came up with what we call the 6 essential elements for a strong Catholic marriage. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing that now, Teresa, for the last 25 years.
Wow.
With over 98% success rate in helping these couples, because we don't bring them to Greg and Julie. We take them back to God and His church and what God had intended for us through this church in order to experience the joy and happiness that He intended.
So, Julie, when we were chatting on the phone yesterday in preparation for the program, you mentioned that, even now, 25 years later, many of the same issues are coming, and you're hearing about them around the country with your marriage disciples. What are some of those issues today? Are they the same as they were 25 years ago?
It's same, but it's a lot more. It's like a tsunami, Teresa, because so many people have no clue what marriage is. It seems as though people are coming back to their faith and they're having an individual relationship with Jesus, but they don't truly understand how to make it work in their marriage. And I mean, we're talking about lack of communication is huge. Family of origin, wounds, and past trauma, but especially infidelity. Infidelity is coming in like you wouldn't believe. It's because all these things of people not having that understanding of communicating with each other. But what we see on TV, on movies, on everything, there's always these issues that are presented, and people get into these scenarios and these situations that cause so much damage and so much pain. And it used to be, and I'll be honest, when we first started, a lot of women were calling, and now it's both. A lot of men and women are calling because it's on both sides. There's men participating in being unfaithful, and same with women going into the workplace, and even with people that they're meeting at church. I mean, it's just all over the place, Teresa, and it's so sad because people are not strengthening their marriage. And as we know, there's an element of evil, and he presents things, and he comes in a way to make it seem like you're going to be happier or better off if you go do this or go talk to this person. None of that is true. It causes so much pain and damage, and so it's not good.
And what I think is interesting, and by the way, we're talking with Julie and Greg Alexander, the Alexander House. Check out their beautiful website, alexanderhouse.org, and we're doing Mornings on Marriage, which we do once a month. I don't know if you guys have noticed this new trend on some of these social media sites where women and men are finding out that their spouses are on Tinder or all these dating sites, and they track them and they confront them. And I'm thinking, isn't this interesting in a world that says everything is okay, doing whatever you want and whatever you feel like? And I don't know how many of these are real, because it could be, all fake in terms of, just acting. But at the same time, I find it very compelling that they think it's important to get it out there, that they're trying to do something about this. So I think that says, again, it speaks to the natural law and what's really on our hearts. Greg, I'll let you wrap up before we take a break.
Yeah, Teresa, first of all, I want to say it's amazing how we tend to normalize sin, so much to the point that it becomes acceptable. And again, in a lot of these situations, and they are true, we get a few of those on occasion. And what starts to happen, again, as Julie alluded to, we lose that ability to experience love with each other, that feeling of being in love, if you will. But there's so much undergirded there that needs to be attended to in terms of how we speak and how we treat each other on a daily basis that allows us to know whether or not we're going to feel love. And when we start to lose the ability to experience that in the relationship, we turn elsewhere. And as Julie talked about as well, a lot of times we find it in the office and workplace, but now people are going to social media, even Facebook, and reconnecting with old boyfriends or girlfriends from high school. So social media has made it too easy for people to cheat.
I think it's very compelling that people are upset about this, because the world is saying just the opposite, right? Julia, what do you think?
Yeah, it's incredible. It is definitely saying the times that it comes out that people will be appalled, which we all should be appalled, and yet it's promoted. It's promoted, and it's out there, and it's so dark because we have seen it time and time again. It doesn't make your life any easier.
Nope,
it literally
makes it worse. Have to take a break. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about a beautiful way to support this amazing marriage ministry, the alexanderhouse.org. Julie and Greg Alexander for our Mornings on Marriage. We'll be right back. having a very important conversation with our friends Julie and Greg Alexander of the Alexander House, thealexanderhouse.org. They're based down in the beautiful Lone Star State of Texas. And speaking of Texas, they have a wonderful gala coming up, and they have a new sponsor who is supporting this amazing ministry. I'm so glad to hear about this. So, Greg, tell us the date and how people can learn more about this big event for your wonderful ministry.
Yes, Teresa, we're hosting our first gala in the Dallas-Fort Worth area on June 26th at the Statler Hotel. Father Donald Calloway is going to be a keynote speaker, so a lot of people know about him and how awesome he is. But again, the great sponsor that we have that has stepped up to the plate because they heard about what we're doing, love what we're doing, and thinks that it needs to be increased more, expanded. And so that's part of our efforts in hosting this event so that we can expand all over the world. But for whatever reason, we're starting in Dallas, Texas.
And so what will they learn at this event about the Marriage Alexander House?
They'll learn, first of all, how bad Julie treated me in a marriage relationship. and what I had to do painstakingly to get through that, to come back.
All about you, Greg. So let's just make sure everybody knows that.
Greg.
All about Greg.
Is
that going to be on the invitation? All about Greg.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So first and foremost, it's called First Comes Marriage, because it literally is that. It's the foundation of all things, Teresa. Even what we talk about is to end abortion or to stop all these things that are happening, because we have to go back to the beginning. The cell which creates the foundation of all things, which is everything, comes by way of the family, and the family is begotten by the marriage, and we don't spend enough time on it. As Greg mentioned, the sponsor that we have is Papine Studios, and we're so thrilled to be a part of it. This person is helping us. They're the executive producer of the new movie that's coming out, Jimmy. It's about the life story of Jimmy Stewart, and it's coming out this next year. And they have, again, liked what we do, incredible about saying that marriage needs to be the center of all things. And so we are beyond thrilled and would love to have as many people there as we can. It's going to be a party. It's going to be fun and, dancing and all that. But the message will be profound.
And how many people are you hoping will show up, do you think? How many people can you fit?
350.
Okay. All right. So how's it going so far? Is it open for registration?
Yeah, we just opened up for registration, and it's going pretty well. So, yes, it's on our website, and please go there. We have sponsorships available, and we just look forward to having whoever and all people can. But the alexanderhouse.org is where they can go and find out about the gala and all the things that we do.
Let's talk a little bit, and Greg, I'll go back to you in terms of when does a couple, if they're not sure if they need to, let's say, sit down with you and Julie or another one of your wonderful marriage discipleship couples, how do they know it's time, do you think, to get some help?
I think when you start to see that you lose that ability to communicate, Teresa, that's usually the first sign, is that when you can no longer come to the other person, express your thoughts or your feelings, because that's what really needs to happen as we start to experience things going south, so to speak. That is the time that we should be able to come to our spouse and say, hey, there's this issue, I'm thinking this, or I'm feeling this, or whatever the case may be. And too many times, unfortunately, the spouse who needs to hear that information doesn't allow for the atmosphere to exist so the other person can come and talk in the first place. And I'll go back to our story, because Julie comes from a family where, they didn't communicate a lot and kind of kept things under the carpet just to kind of keep things smooth. And so therefore, for the times when she did come to talk, I was too quick to belittle, disregard, or to put down some of the things that she was having to say, to the point where she stopped coming to the table. And so when we are not able to express that, we start stuffing those feelings and those thoughts and those attitudes. And while at the same time we're stuffing, we're also starting to build up a sense of bitterness and resentment towards the other person. And that starts to manifest in a whole host of different ways. But fast forward to when we were on the brink of divorce, and we got into this heated discussion one day, and Julie was expressing all the things that she was discontented about in the marriage. And I made the response, well, why didn't you ever tell me? And she looked at me and said, are you kidding me? I can never talk. You never allowed me to say anything. Every time I tried to say something, you would put it down. And so, again, we have to allow that atmosphere to exist where one or the other can come and express, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I feel. And to be able to express it, but then also to listen to that and to respond in a way that's going to bring a resolution. Again, too many times we listen, and instead of working towards a response, we start defending why we exemplified the behavior we did in the first place.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, Teresa, unfortunately, I want to invite people to come as soon as they think that there's any issues. It's never too early. Oftentimes they wait until it's too late. They will come, and they have, by the time they get to us, honestly, they've been to their family, friends, priests, even people in the church, and people are telling them they don't know what to do with them. That, maybe we can help you get an annulment. We are here to say that there is hope for every single marriage, because when you put God in the center and you do it the way that God intended, we have seen a 98% success rate of people coming back and restore, but also ignite what they never even felt before because they don't know how to do it. So we're here to walk with them, to teach them. We have 28 other couples that are trained as marriage disciples, and we want to grow that. We want to get more, and they're all over the nation. And we work with couples all over the world because we do everything. Most of what we do on Zoom and here in person.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people think it is going to be easier and better if they get a divorce. It's just let's just cut the ties now, right?
Oh, absolutely, Teresa. Because of the devastation that they're starting to experience, that's when you start to look and think, hey, it might be able to be better somewhere else. But again, as Julie mentioned, when they come early on, and a lot of times they are astonished to find out that what they're going through is quote unquote normal. They think that they're the only ones struggling with that issue, that there's no hope in sight. As she said as well, everybody else is telling them that they need to divorce and go find that happiness elsewhere. But again, typically what happens when they do that, they take the same baggage on into the next relationship. And so, in fact, statistics show that those who are in subsequent marriages are more likely to divorce than they did the first time. So, again, it just starts to repeat the cycle, so to speak.
Well, I think if they would go to your website, thealexanderhouse.org, and then you can see galas on the top right hand of the homepage of the website, I think they'll just be thrilled to look at the rundown for this event. First Comes Marriage Gala. And the guest speaker, by the way, did we mention this, is going to be the one, the only Father Donald Calloway. He's fantastic. He's
incredible, Teresa. And he was so excited to be a part of this as well and to do it. We've had conversations with him about marriage and the importance of marriage. And it's not that we're the only apostles out there working in this regard, but I think we're one of the few who actually works in terms of the couple-to-couple mentoring process. And again, that was a God thing. We didn't even know that's what we were going to be doing, but God has called us to this point. And again, as Julie stated, we have so many other couples coming on board. In fact, this time next year, we hope to have 100 couples around the nation serving in this capacity as well. And, it's been interesting lately, the interest that people have in serving. We spoke at the Seek Conference in Denver in January, and we picked up 6 new couples just at that event because people are starting to hear that there's an apostolate or organization doing this kind of work, and people just want to be a part because I think, as you kind of talked about with the social media and the Tinder stuff, people are getting tired of seeing the fallout from the troubled marriages, and so there are people who are wanting to help now, which is awesome.
And one of the greatest graces that we're able to offer, Teresa, is we have no charge for what we do.
Yeah, that's huge. Before we let you go, we only have about 30, 40 seconds left. I forgot to ask you, what's the date for the gala?
The date is June 26th, again in Dallas at the Statler Hotel.
Okay, and you can go to thealexanderhouse.org and look for the section on the upper right-hand search bar for galas. And again, Father Don Calloway is the keynote speaker. Amazing. And that's in June 26th. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Minutes past the hour. Welcome back, Catholic Connection, on a Wednesday morning, April 15th, 2026. Always great to catch up with Joni, as I call her, Joan Lewis from WTN. Oh my goodness, we were just talking during the break. We need like a full hour or even more. So the Holy Father is on his way. He left Algeria. That was such a moving scene, him going into those ruins in the place where St. Augustine actually preached and taught. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
We've had so many wonderful, wonderful videos, and that there are little videos with the text of what the event is that EWTN has been putting out every single day. Just a short version of a particular meeting, event, homily, etc. and they're just wonderful. Because one thing that I've noted in all of these events, I was more excited about yesterday, him being in the home of his, beloved St. Augustine. And so today he's landed, I think about a half an hour ago in Cameroon, and has meetings with the authorities there, and will visit a school towards the end of the day. But what I've noticed, Teresa, is how often we see the Pope with a big smile on his face. Well, whoever he's meeting with, it can be the older citizens that are being taken care of, the elderly being taken care of by the little sisters of the poor. It can be a meeting, with young people, just children being welcomed at the airport, or he planted a tree, in Hippo, in what today is called Annaba. But he just seems to be so totally happy that to be wherever he is at the moment, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, just watch the joy on his face. And, of course, the solemn moments would be, something obviously like a mass. But, the Pope said on the plane to journalists, he said, by the way, he's the first Pope to visit Algeria. He went as a priest of, St. Augustine, but he is the first Holy Roman Pontiff to visit Algeria. But he told the journalist, he said, I'm happy to visit once again the land of St. Augustine. He represents a very important bridge in interreligious dialogue, and he's deeply loved in his homeland, as we will see. So he said having the opportunity to visit these places, especially where Augustine was the bishop in Hippo, he said is just a wonderful opportunity. And he said this is also a blessing for the church, because we always seek, like Augustine did, we always must seek bridges to build peace and reconciliation. And so he said this journey then represents a valuable opportunity to continue with the same voice, the same message. The message being to promote peace, reconciliation, respect, and consideration for all peoples. And of course, why are those words important? Because we are looking at countries where not even Christians are the majority, much less Catholics. And you will have other, Christian denominations in the countries he's visited, but most of them will be, a Muslim majority. And the Holy Father has taken great care to always point out, which he certainly did for 2 days in Algeria, how, the different faiths live together. And it is possible to be a bridge and to live together, notwithstanding diversity, whether it's cultural, whether it's religious. So I think you're going to hear a lot more of that. I know there's big problems coming up in Cameroon, and the people
that came up again. I saw that on the Vatican News site about Cameroon. They're already expressing concerns. Yeah.
And I mean, the Cameroonian people are looking forward, because so many of them were listening, not just the people who will, physically really host the Holy Father, but they've been following his trip because he's going to be in 4 African countries. And so, arriving in Cameroon, the second of those 4, they've been paying attention to his visits in Algeria, to how the people saw him, but to his words about unity. And we can, notwithstanding 50 differences, cultural, religious, and otherwise, peoples can still live together in peace. And that's really, peace, of course, has been a word on his lips and ours and just about everyone's, in recent days. But he wants peace between peoples. Right. And, you and I covered, actually from Rome, I was doing the commentary for Pope Benedict's visit, I think it was 2009, to Cameroon. And I had a TV in my office, and then I was linked to something called a blue box, and then I translated his homilies and made commentary. But I know one of the things that always stands out, has stood out with popes, is the fact that you have, for example, tribes in so many countries, maybe every country. In Africa, there's 53 countries. And there can be huge differences. Sometimes it seems like you can't create a bridge to cross from one tribal area to another in Africa. And yet, what you always have to do, and this is what every living diplomat tries to do when they are appointed to a certain country, even if there's a lot of differences with the government and the people of those countries, you always have to look for the one, the two, the three things that unite you, not what divides. Mm-hmm. That just has to be the focus. And I'm sure that the Holy Father, when he and some of his assistants sat down to write a lot of these speeches, first of all, what a pope does, and I remember this from the days I worked at the Vatican with John Paul traveling and Benedict traveling so much. The popes get a lot of input from the country, mm-hmm. and particularly I know what I want to talk about. I know what some of your problems are, but what would you like to stress? And so they get input from the different groups they're going to meet, and maybe even, the diplomatic corps. So it's the Pope is being helped by so many people to know what the predominant problems are in a country. And they could be political, they could be religious, they could be 10 or 15 different things. So they get a lot of input. So when a Pope talks, when he gives maybe not so much a homily, but when a Pope is addressing a group or cultural leaders or the diplomatic corps or government officials, he's already had a lot of input from the people in their country. And then he'll have his own input, whatever values he's talking about, about morality, about values, about culture, about dignity of human beings, about unity. It all comes from his own heart, but then also from the country itself. So I think I don't know how many people know that, but the Pope, he wouldn't even physically have time to sit down and write every single talk. Just look at what Pope Leo does in Rome on a given day.
Right.
You and I have the agenda. We see it. He may meet with 8 or 10 groups and people, and he's going to be saying something to everyone. And he has to know who they are if he's never met them before. But he's a very learned Pope. I mean, he's been around for quite a while in the Vatican as head of the Augustinians, of course, for many years here in Rome. And then in all of his travels, he's learned so much. So he's a very erudite person. And, Teresa, one of the things which contributes to the beauty of his words is that he, Leo, listens to people very carefully. Sometimes we watch him instead of somebody in the group that's talking to him, and just watch how he listens. And I'm sure he's, having a lot of meetings like that, obviously, in these different African countries. So he's got Cameroon, which he has just started that visit. And then, of course,
he just started it because he was supposed to land at 3:20 Rome time, which is about 50 minutes ago or 40 minutes ago. So he's there by now, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. And then, Cameroon is Angola and then Equatorial Guinea. And it's funny, you and I, since we both do radio, I am a stickler for pronunciation of names that I've never heard of or don't know. And especially when they are the name of a person and they'll have 17 letters and 2 vowels. And I go to pronunciation.
Me too. Same thing.
Yeah. We have to.
Right.
And because someone asked me the other day, I have been pronouncing it as Equatorial Guinea, and that's how all of the sites that I've gone to, different ones for pronunciation, have pronounced it, because it spells like it might be Guinea. But anyway, that's just a trivial thing, but not so trivial if you live in the country. Right. You want people to pronounce it correctly.
So how much time from your experience working at the Vatican, obviously everyone knows that any pope is not going to sit down and write all of his talks, because the talks are every single day everywhere, whether it's in Rome, across Italy, or wherever the Vicar of Christ may be traveling. But someone like Pope Leo, who is, I think, reserved in terms of the way he approaches things, and he's very, an excellent speaker, I'm sure he sits down and reviews, probably on the plane, right?
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Teresa. No pope is going to utter a single word,
right,
unless he has obviously A, written it, or B, contributed to it. Like John Paul, the one thing that he always wanted to write himself was anytime he addressed young people, whether it was World Youth Day or whatever, he sat down and did all of the writing. And then both he and Benedict, when they would, let's say they were going to talk about evangelization, well, they might contact some people right here in Rome, at the office for evangelization, and then they'll contact another country. But what they'll do, and this was so, Benedict was very big on this, on scriptural quotes. And so he would say, okay, these are the 6 things from Scripture that I want to highlight in my talk. But there have to be a lot of big, very well-informed people at the Vatican, too,
right,
to know that. And again, if you're going to be talking about liturgy or evangelization or Youth Day or something, you want to go to the people whose job it is to make all that happen,
right,
the experts in the field.
Right.
But no,
I always like to use it as an opportunity to learn more. For example, I love St. Augustine, always have. And the fact that he was there, in the church, the ruins there, it just forced me to revisit some of the teachings of Augustine and learn more about him and how much he actually wrote. And I shared that with our listeners yesterday in my editorial section in the second hour of the program. All of this should be an opportunity for us to learn. If the Holy Father thinks it's important enough to go there, then we should be thinking about it as well. Oops, looks like we lost Joni. Okay. All right. Well, we thank Joan for joining us. Apparently, there were some technical difficulties in Rome as well as in Michigan this morning. It's live radio. We just keep going. So coming up in the second half of the program, Bill Donahue, the president of the Catholic League, is going to be talking to us. He's been covering a lot of issues impacting the church, and he is going to take a look at one of the stories that the Free Press, the website The Free Press, published that was totally taken out of context in terms of the information that really wasn't information. It was practically fake news. And then we'll do some more discussion on what's happening between the Pope and the President. Bill has been doing a number of interviews on this as well. We'll be right back, and hopefully Joan's okay in Rome. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us on a Wednesday edition of Catholic Connection, a production of EWTN. It's April 15th, text deadline today, but you can file for extension, of course. Coming up in the second hour on EWTN's Radio Extra, very honored to have the one, the only Bill Donahue, president of the Catholic League, noted author, speaker, Catholic apologist, and of course sociologist as well. He's been following very closely developments with many of the stories concerning the Vatican and the United States administration of Donald Trump. And he has a very interesting piece on his website regarding the story that broke with the Free Press News online website. And they were talking about this meeting that took place between representatives of the Trump administration and the Pope. And apparently what this reporter wrote was extremely sensationalized and did not really match up with what those who went to the meeting experienced, and even the papal nuncio spoke out about that. So we'll talk about that with Bill and some other developments. Of course, the Holy Father's travels, and he's actually just landed in Cameroon, as we mentioned a few minutes ago. So that's coming up in the second hour of the program. Also, there's a really big story that we're following. This broke yesterday, so we'll have to make sure we get some pro-life response to this, but I'll have it as my lead story. A big report was released by the Justice Department yesterday talking about what happened under the previous administration, they're accused of collaborating with pro-abortion groups in weaponizing law enforcement against pro-lifers. Now, EWTNnews.com had a big story on the separate incident involving a man and his family who were targeted by the Biden administration. They actually won $1 million lawsuit. So We'll have that and much more news, and also Bill Donahue and the weather coming up. Stay tuned. Hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra right around the corner.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And we continue our Wednesday programming, and glad you're tuning in to EWTN's Radio Extra. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And we are going to be spending most of our time today after the news and whatnot with our friend Bill Donahue, of course, from the Catholic League. He's going to be addressing a number of stories making headlines. As a matter of fact, when he and I were emailing back and forth in preparation for the segments this morning, he was telling me he was about to go on Turkish television to talk about what's going on between the Vatican and the administration here in the United States. So I can't wait to see how that went, and just to get his perspective, because even though he's a very feisty, solid Irish Catholic, he is very, very, very solid, and he is calm in terms of explaining the truth of the matter. And he takes a lot of time reviewing and investigating what's happening, looking at all the different sources, as we all should. I know we don't have that kind of time. He does it for a living. But it's really important to make sure that we are looking at a variety of sources when a story breaks. So I was telling Bill in the emails back and forth this morning, the minute I saw that story on the Free Press about what members of the administration allegedly said in the meeting at the Vatican, I thought, that sounds just so bizarre. I don't believe it. And it turned out not to be true, or it was extremely exaggerated. And even the church came out and said that. Very different, that perspective. And of course, the media picked up on it and just ran with it, but without even checking. And then when the follow-up came out with the statements from the Vatican, those were nowhere to be found except on our news outlets and a few conservative outlets, and of course, the Vatican news site. So very important to have someone as thorough and as well-educated in the faith and in general as Bill Donahue on with us from the Catholic League to talk about it. So we will be spending, after the news again, the entire 45 minutes in terms of our program content with our good friend Bill Donahue. Of course, the weather is causing issues all over the place. We have severe thunderstorms and thunderstorm showers, severe weather that are expected. Thunderstorms expected from the northeast to the mid-Mississippi Valley and to the central southern plains through tomorrow. Not just today, but through tomorrow as well. And then we have a front that's producing late-season snowfall over the Cascades and Northern Rockies and coastal rain over the northwest coast, and that will happen through tomorrow. So the Midwest, Michigan, got clobbered with rain overnight, late yesterday and overnight, and we had all kinds of flood watches and warnings as we went to sleep this morning. So looks like that's passed. We're still expecting a little bit more rain today, but other parts, as we just mentioned, are still struggling with the forecast, so keep that in mind. Almost 3 minutes past the hour. We appreciate your listenership. We need to check the news with you here on EWTN. According to a report released yesterday by the Justice Department, the Biden administration is accused of collaborating with pro-abortion groups and weaponizing law enforcement against pro-lifers. Under the leadership of Attorney General Merrick Garland, the Biden era, several sources, including the Daily Signal, citing the report, saying the Justice Department aggressively applied the FACE Act, or the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances measure, against pro-lifers. The FACE Act protects access to abortion clinics, pregnancy centers, and houses of worship. The report is 882 pages long. It was released on yesterday, and it documents more than 700 internal records of enforcement of the law to protect abortion facilities. The report says the Biden Justice Department collaborated with organizations including the National Abortion Federation, Planned Parenthood, and the Feminist Majority Foundation to track pro-life activists. Pro-choice organizations compiling evidence and dossiers that were used for search warrants, according to the Signal, and charges against pro-life activists, the report says. Career attorneys of the Justice Department monitored pro-life activists for years before charging them, one lead prosecutor going as far to help the National Abortion Federation's application for a private grant without getting ethics approval for a party with business before the DOJ, the report noted. The report also says federal prosecutors authorized aggressive arrest tactics rather than allowing pro-life defendants to self-surrender. It says the Biden administration prosecutors withheld evidence that defense counsel requested. Further, the Justice Department attempted to screen out jurors based on religion. Mark Mayfield tells us President Trump says he doesn't see the war in Iran lasting all that much longer.
He made the comment in an interview with Fox Business.
I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
The full interview is set to air later today. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, meanwhile, hosted a meeting between the Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors. Continued Israeli attacks on Lebanon were a sticking point in the recent negotiations over a ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran.
All of the complexities of this matter are not going to be resolved in the next 6 hours, but we can begin to move forward to create the framework where something can happen, something very positive, something very permanent.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is pushing for a second round of in-person peace talks with Iran. That, according to multiple reports, which say U.S. officials are looking at locations, and they could happen as early as this week. It comes as a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is in its second day. Vice President J.D. Vance says it's up to Iran to take the next steps toward ending the war after talks in Pakistan over the weekend ended without a deal. And Tammy Trujillo tells us U.S. military says the American blockade of Iranian ports has been now fully implemented.
The head of U.S. Central Command posted on social media that an estimated 90% of Iran's economy is fueled by international sea trade. And in less than 36 hours, U.S. forces have completely halted all economic trade going into and out of Iran by sea. CENTCOM says shipping traffic not related to Iran may cross through the blockade, and that U.S. forces may target ships carrying Iranian cargo long after they leave the Strait of Hormuz. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Vice President Vance addressing Erica Kirk's absence at a Turning Point USA event in Athens, Georgia yesterday. The widow of conservative activist Charlie Kirk was set to appear yesterday with the vice president, but canceled after threats were made against her.
If you're going after Erica Kirk and not the people who are trying to destroy the United States of America, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Turning Point USA, founded by Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated during an event last September. Meanwhile, the vice president also remarked on Pope Leo, saying he has a lot of respect for the pontiff, even if he disagrees with him.
I have a lot of respect for the Pope. I like him. I admire him. I've gotten to know him a little bit. It doesn't bother me when he speaks on issues of the day, frankly, even when I disagree with how he's applying a particular principle.
Meanwhile, Senator Lindsey Graham is suggesting the Holy Father has got this all wrong when it comes to the U.S.-Israeli conflict in Iran. Graham addressing the Pope during a recent interview and said he is a good, holy man, but does not understand the evil of Iran. The Pope has also been outspoken in his opposition of the conflict with Iran, which has led President Trump to call the pontiff weak on crime. Senator Graham siding with the president and saying, you're not going to talk the Ayatollah out of giving up his nukes. You're going to have to make him give up his nukes. Pope Leo this morning visiting Our Lady of Africa Daycare Center before leaving Algeria for the second leg of his 11-day trip to Africa. And now he has landed in Cameroon, day 3 of his visit to Africa. The Pope is set to visit Angola, Equatorial Guinea on his first apostolic journey, which will run through the 23rd of April. Ahead of his arrival, those waiting for him to land in Cameroon were telling Vatican News they were hoping his apostolic journey to the African nation could inspire diverse groups to live together, work together, and get along. The Vatican indicating that the Holy Father's agenda will focus on combating corruption within the mineral-rich country and advocating for the proper exercise of political authority. Jason Nathanson tells us a new accuser has come forward with rape charges against California Congressman Eric Swalwell.
I did not consent to any sexual activity.
At a press conference Tuesday, Lana Drew says she met with Swalwell in 2018 to talk business. They became friendly. And during a third meeting at a public event, he spiked her drink and raped her. She says it destroyed her.
I did not want to live anymore.
She says she didn't go to the cops at the time because she was afraid of Swalwell, but now she'll file a police report. Swalwell, who announced Monday he was resigning from Congress, hasn't responded to this claim, but has denied other sex assault claims against him. I'm Jason Nathanson.
And Texas Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez also stepping down. His letter was read on the House floor.
Enclosed is my resignation letter to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, effective April 14, 2026 at 11:59 p.m.
Gonzalez previously admitted to an affair with the staffer who later committed suicide. There are also allegations that he also sent lewd text messages to another campaign worker who quit. His resignation brings the total number of House vacancies now to 4. Jack Cronin tells us a man who led the deadly human smuggling attempt off the coast of San Diego last year, well, they've both pleaded guilty.
The incident happened in May near Del Mar, with the boat overturning and killing 4 people, including 2 children. Jesus Leiva and Julio Luna pleaded guilty to taking 19 people across the border on the overloaded boat that was not prepared for an emergency. The boat capsized 200 yards off the coast, throwing everyone into the water, including many who couldn't swim. The maximum sentence in the case is life in prison or the death penalty. I'm Jack Cronin.
More heavy rain and storms expected in the windy city of Chicago this morning. The National Weather Service expecting things to dry up for a little bit before additional storms will arrive later today. Last night, heavy downpours impacted the north and northwest suburbs, causing lightning, flooding, and some downed trees. The FAA says a ground stop was also issued for flights heading to O'Hare last night due to those bad storms. Perry Williams tells us, meanwhile, several residents and businesses in Chicago, the owners there in their Hyde Park area neighborhood, are taking a victory lap after halting a planned teen takeover.
A number of people organized their own adult takeover and spoke with young people with the hope of shutting down a rowdy gathering.
Let's have a conversation instead of talking at them and making them feel like it's us against them. We're in this together. We love you.
On March 30th, teens caused thousands of dollars in damage in Hyde Park by running across the tops of vehicles. Mayor Brandon Johnson posted a plea on X, calling for parents to be aware of where their children are. I'm Perry Williams.
A Florida doctor facing manslaughter charges after he allegedly removed a man's liver instead of his spleen. The 70-year-old patient from Alabama undergoing the procedure to have his spleen removed back in August of 24 when he suffered catastrophic blood loss and died on the operating table. Dr. Thomas Shevnovsky reported the man died of a ruptured spleen artery aneurysm, but an autopsy revealed the spleen was untouched and the liver was gone. He was arrested this week after being indicted for second-degree manslaughter. Scott Pringle tells us investigators are now trying to figure out just how a freight train derailed in northern New Jersey.
Officials say rail cars came off the tracks by Tunnelly Avenue and Route 3 in North Bergen Tuesday afternoon. Some of them ended up on their sides. That shut down Route 3 and drew a large response from firefighters and a hazmat team. One of the cars was carrying highly flammable and hazardous liquid that leaked out. Officials say there's no health threat to the public. In New Jersey, I'm Scott Pringle.
And that Michigan man who was held for questioning in his wife's disappearance in the Bahamas is now out of jail, but authorities say he is still a suspect. Brian Hooker says in nearly 2 weeks that his wife has been gone as the longest the two have ever been apart in their 25-year marriage. Hooker telling investigators his wife fell off a dinghy in rough seas earlier this month and disappeared. The search, though, is continuing for her. It is a Wednesday morning. It's April 15th, Tax Day 2026. Hope all is well with you. We have a great second hour of Catholic Connection coming up momentarily in about 2 minutes. The one, the only Bill Donahue is going to join us. He's fresh off an interview with Turkish television, all about what's going on in terms of the Pope and the President and, of course, the Pope's travels to Africa. He'll be telling us about that as well, his thoughts on what the Pope is hoping to accomplish. Kind of picking up where our Joan Lewis left off. Of course, Bill is not only head of the Catholic League, he's also a noted author, speaker, and he's a sociologist, and he's written many, many books. So we're going to take a deep dive with Bill Donahue when we come back. And just a reminder, if you're in the Chicago area or if you're in any of the affected areas with the weather, keep that in mind, because it's going to be a little rough with lots of storms coming through today and tomorrow. We'll be right back. Hope you're having a great day. Always important and energizing and informative to catch up with our friend Bill Donahue from the Catholic League. And he just got off other interviews regarding the situation between the Pope and the President. There's also some great pieces already posted on the CatholicLeague.org. Hyping Vatican feud is one, and also Pope and President clash. There's 2 great pieces that Bill wrote. Okay, so had to catch up with you. I think you're one of the best people, the best person to really kind of diagnose this for us and how we Catholics should look and think about this. You just did an interview with Turkish television. Tell us about that. How'd that go?
Well, the moderator was a woman from the UK, and she was very good, very fair. And there was a Republican young guy on there who was all in the Trump camp, a Republican guy. Trump never does anything wrong, of course. And then we had a guy who was a Catholic liberal who was mostly critical of Trump. I would say entirely critical of Trump. So I am not trying to be forced, into balance here. I'm a kind of person who believes sometimes one side is 100% right and the other side is 100% wrong. Sometimes it's 80-20, 70-30, 50-50. You have to make up your mind. There's no template about every issue. I did find fault with both the Pope and the President, and I made I staked out my position.
So explain that to us, because I'm in agreement with you there. So I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that, look, I understand why Trump would make arguments such as I'm going to blow up a whole Iranian civilization, because he wants to show to the people running Iran that, you're dealing with somebody who's very serious, and since they don't listen to anything except with threats, perhaps that was the only way to get through them. On the other hand, he's the President of the United States, and we're not ever going to be involved in a kind of an international war crime where the Pope and the Secretary General of the UN were both correct to say that's what this would trigger. We're not going to kill civilians. We're not going to knock out power plants and kill them intentionally. Terrorism means the intentional killing of innocents. And so I think that typical hyperbole with the rhetoric from the Trump, and I just I don't go along with him on that. On the other hand, he did say that, what's this business about crime? He's talking about the Pope and the bishops of the United States criticizing the Trump administration because of mass deportations. Well, why do we have mass deportations? We had a mass invasion, didn't we? 20 million people, illegal aliens, busted into this country, taking over social services and the like. Mass deportations are abetted by mass invasions. And so I think that the bishops blew it on this. I think that the Pope, and by not addressing this, it almost sounds like as if they're justifying it. I don't want to say that they are, but they were very weak. And Francis was weak on this, too. We had a Catholic president who allowed all of this to happen. His name is Joe Biden. So on that issue there, I think the clear winner is Trump. But then he has to muddy the waters by coming out like a fool and posing as Jesus. He lied when he said he was a doctor. No, we know what he meant. Stop the line. And so it's offensive and it's immature. And so, this whole thing is a mess.
In terms of Catholics, how should we be looking at this in terms of really just scratching our heads and just it is a mess, and that's what's so frustrating to me.
Well, one of the things I think we need to decide is whether or not this is a just war. Now, the three cardinals who are on the left, Tobin out of Newark, McElroy out of Washington, and Supich out of
They're
Chicago,
on 60 Minutes,
say it's they say it's not a just war. I'm on the side of Father Jerry Murray, who wrote a piece today in the Free Press that it is a just war, and I myself have studied this and have taught this to students when I was a professor. I think it meets all the criteria. So, okay, there's a difference there. Let's say one side disagrees with the other, whether or not it's a just war. Fine. The question is, I haven't seen such strength coming from both Rome and from the United States bishops in speaking out about a president's policies they dislike in many, many, many years. We know what Biden did with regard to abortion, same-sex marriage, sex reassignment surgery, go right down the line, and very little. We got some pushback, not as much. And so Catholics have to look at this and say, listen, let's let the dust settle a little bit here. Whether or not it's a just war is a debatable issue, but I don't think anybody can blame Trump for saying, listen, Iran has said over and over again that we are not going to give up on getting uranium to build a bomb. We always talk about death to Israel and death to America. Now, if at this late date they're still digging their heels in and they want the uranium to build a nuclear weapon and they believe in death to America, I don't think I want to wait. I'm not the type of guy who waits until the fire is next door before I call the firemen. If I see it down the block, I call the firemen. And some Catholics, I think, confuse pacifism with surrender. I take great offense as a veteran, not just as a Catholic, that somebody talks about, well, I believe in pacifism and you don't. What do you mean? You have to go to war sometimes. And this is where Pope Leo was wrong on March the 1st. And he says the only way to achieve peace is through negotiation and dialogue. Well, I have one question. What if they say, no, we don't want to dialogue, and we're not giving up on our
that is the point that has
then?
not been addressed, and this is what is really frustrating to me as a journalist and as a Catholic talk show host and as a Catholic is trying to live my faith out, to the best of my ability. Where is that explanation? Where is that admission on the part of the Vatican that they didn't want to come to the table, had no intention of coming to the table?
Well, that's exactly right, and I think that they were not very strong coming after October the 7th, for that matter. There's a selective interest in punctuating this kind of material, and quite frankly, we're not used to this. Most popes, if they have a difference with the President of the United States or his administration, will speak more elliptically. They more generally. Everyone will kind of know between the lines who he's talking about. They're not as pointed as what Pope Leo has been, and I think that's what's created some fissures in the MAGA crowd. So, I just hope that these people. I like Vance a lot, but when he says that the Pope should stick to morality, what does he think war is? Mm-hmm. Isn't that a moral issue?
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of misspeaking that's going on here, and I'm just trying to be fair to both sides on this. Obviously, the Holy Father has to be respected. And I think he has the respect of people, but I also think that if he's becoming tendentious and he's tipping just to one side, nobody wants to regard the Vatican as the arm of the Democratic Party.
Right. I do think that what Trump said about the Holy Father was totally disrespectful and completely inappropriate, was not necessary. He could have said after the comments from the Pope, well, the Holy Father certainly has, similar to what Georgia Maloney said. She put out a pretty good statement. The Holy Father is leader of the Catholic Church. Popes are always going to come out against war. I respectfully disagree with him. I'm the leader of the free world, and I have information that is strongly saying that they have been developing nuclear weapons. But again, I respect the Holy Father. Boom, done. That's all you have to do. To go off on this tangent and say I like his brother better, he's a MAGA guy. It's so ridiculous.
Well, it is, and it's so immature.
Right.
He has an abrasive style to him. He has to win every war. He can't. He won't listen to reason. He doesn't act presidential. He can act presidential. I've seen it, and that's when he's at his strongest point. But he loses the support of his own people when he has this kind of juvenile outburst, and that's what it is. It's juvenile. He listens to nobody. Maybe if he'd listened more to Susie Wiles, who seems to have her head screwed on straight, he wouldn't get into this mess.
Senator Lindsey Graham, I thought, had a very balanced statement. He said Pope Leo has it wrong, according to him, when it comes to Israel and Iran. Graham, addressing the Pope during a recent interview, he said he's a very good, holy man, but I don't think he understands the evil of Iran. And so he's basically saying that, look, you're not going to take Iran to the table and talk them out of giving up nukes, okay? You're going to have to make them give up the nuclear interests. So his point was, I respect the Holy Father, but we have real issues here with Iran that have to be addressed. Something like that would be much more presidential, don't you think?
Absolutely. I agree with everything that Lindsay said, and that's exactly it. I don't think the people in the Vatican understand this any more than they understood the outrage on the part of Catholics in the United States, and non-Catholics as well, about 20 million people crashing our borders and taking over social services, engaging in crime and the like. It's easy to say we should love the stranger and the migrant, provided they come into the country legally. They're not going to. They have built stronger fortresses and walls over there at the Vatican to make sure that illegals don't go crashing into them. What about the people in Texas? Did they interview any of those people whose backyards were taken over by illegals and the like? I mean, the mess that was taken, we didn't hear enough about that. So if you don't make a distinction between legal migration and illegal migration, then as far as I'm concerned, you've lost the debate.
More with Bill Donahue on a Wednesday morning edition of Catholic Connection. We'll be right back. Chatting with our friend Bill Donahue from the Catholic League, continuing our conversation on so many different headlines flying back and forth. And Bill, I just pulled up Father Murray's piece on the Free Press regarding the Catholic case for war with Iran. The Church advocates peace, but it isn't pacifist. Limiting a nuclear threat from a determined enemy is a noble reason to make war. And then I, because of everything that was being discussed, I went back to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and went through the just war principle, which is paragraphs 2309 to 2313, which emphasizes, as Father Murray said in his piece, war is morally permissible only under rigorous conditions of legitimacy, including just cause, having a real, lasting, grave, and certain danger, last resort, and this is what stuck out to me, and I'd love your comment on this, all peaceful alternatives must have been exhausted or proven ineffective. The situation with Iran has been going on for nearly 50 years, so how does this not apply here?
No, I think Father Murray is right as usual. There's no question. But I wrote a piece here a week ago, Is Pacifism Moral? And again, I look at this also through the eyes as a veteran, not just as a Catholic. When I was a professor, there were hundreds of Catholic professors in the audience. They had a professor from Carnegie Mellon University who was a Quaker who came in and he lectured us on basically how evil Catholicism was because we weren't pacifist. And they sat there kind of like, maybe he has a good point, until I put my hand up and I said, let me tell you something. Everybody in this room would be dead today had we not rejected everything you've just said. Pacifism didn't bring about the end of World War II. War did. And we beat them. Okay? So sometimes you have to go to war in order to get the peace. And a pacifist basically believes in surrender. I don't need to be lectured to by pacifists with their self-righteousness. Nobody wants war. But sometimes, just like self-defense, national defense is necessary. Catholic Church is right. The teachings, John Paul II. You look at not just the Catechism, St. Augustine himself. St. Aquinas, in laying out the principles of just war. And right. How many times have we been in negotiation with these people, and they keep saying, no, we don't. Even at this hour, they're not agreeing. And their military has been decimated. What does that tell you about their resolve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you said, there's blame on both sides of this. Nobody is perfect in this. And I do think that we as Catholics have to use this as an opportunity to understand more deeply what is a just war. And we also have to remember this is a prudential matter.
Well, it is, and the president is the commander-in-chief, and he has to make those difficult calls. Just as Obama and everybody else, Clinton and all the other leaders, Bush, they've all made tough decisions in terms of military operations. Some of them are right decisions, some of them are wrong decisions. But I think that when you're dealing with a situation where Iran and North Korea and China are the three greatest threats to world peace, if you don't take them seriously, then you're not a world leader. And I think Trump says he wants to wrap it up quickly. He's not very good by making promises, because if you do that and you disappoint people, that's when you get outrage. Nobody wants this thing to go on much longer, but at the same time, while the military has been decimated, we don't want people coming back in there who are just as adamant as the previous administration. Mm-hmm. That's no good either.
So you're an expert at this, but I was talking with Joan Lewis as well in terms of how much information the Pope gets, and the Pope obviously doesn't have time to write all of his speeches, but he does review them before he goes out to address a particular group or audience or a group of faithful. I'm wondering who's informing the Holy Father on what's going on with Iran.
Well, that's an excellent question, because it always comes down to the gatekeeper, doesn't it? Yeah. And we don't know who the gatekeeper exactly is. But I do know this. Francis got himself into a lot of trouble when he was on the papal plane. I did admire his authenticity. He spoke not from script. He spoke from the heart, but he got himself into a lot of trouble. A lot of the problems that Leo's had also have been on the cuff. He's not speaking from his mantle of authority. He's just answering some reporters, looking for some news and some jazz, and he kind of takes the bait. So I think he's going to have to be more disciplined. People say he's very disciplined. I don't think so. When you get involved with the reporters and you're on a plane or you're walking through a hallway and they're looking for something as a quick bite and it's a serious subject, you got to be very, very careful what you say, because it's going to come right back in your face.
What I'm confused by are some of the statements about, for example, how God doesn't hear the prayers of those who wage war. That's a paraphrase, but he basically said, God doesn't hear the people who are involved in these types of aggressive activities. I can't remember the exact quote. But and correct me if I'm wrong, God hears all prayers. He may not answer them or answer them the way we want to be answered, but he hears everything. He's God.
Well, that's true, and I think you would agree with me. It smacks of moral equivalency. We know what happened on October 7th that precipitated a lot of this. 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, mostly women and children, being slaughtered because they're Jews. And then Iran bombing constantly. I mean, we know what's going on. If the Arab nations are on our side and they're not on the side of Iran, doesn't that say something to the people in Rome? Why are the Arabs on our side and not on their side? It's clear because they know they're a threat to everybody. It's not just Jews. It's the Arab nations. They're all aligned against them. Now, when you get into this moral equivalency, both sides are equally wrong. Well, I'm sorry. If I go into a bar and somebody takes a slug at me, I'm going to knock them down. All right? Don't tell me that we're both guilty of hitting somebody. Technically, we are, but morally speaking, I'm defending myself. The other guy was an aggressor. If you don't make those distinctions, then morally, you're not very astute.
Talking with Bill Donahue from the Catholic League on recent developments between the White House and the Vatican and where we go. And where do we go from here? Because both the President Donald Trump, is talking about continually going to the table. They had the meeting with Rubio yesterday with Israel and Lebanon, and then further talks going on, peace talks, even though they fell through over the weekend. J.D. Vance was there and talking with Pakistan. They're dialoguing with everybody, and the Vatican is also dialoguing with people, but they're not dialoguing with each other. I would love to see the Pope, or at least a representative of the Pope, sit down with the President.
Well, that'd be fine, but I think one of the questions here, Teresa, is who are we talking to that really has any legs in this? In other words, the previous leaders are no longer there. So these people, let's just say for the sake of argument, we find a cadre of Iranian leaders who sound somewhat reasonable. Do they have the support of the military? Do they have the support of the Revolutionary Guard? Because whoever has the guns on his side rules. That's true in this country. It's true in every country in the history of the world. Whoever has the guns on their side rule. And the question is, are there enough people within the military? I don't think in the Revolutionary Guard. They're hopeless. But is there enough people within the military who say, listen, we can't support another theocracy, a dictatorship? They kill between 3,000 and 7,000 innocent people. That's a pretty big difference. But so it's thousands anyhow. Let's say it's in the middle. Let's take the median. It's 5,000 innocent people murdered by the military in Iran for demonstrating without arms for peace. So we know that unless we get some people in there in the military, not just with the leaders who are talking to everybody, that they have to be somewhat more moderate than they've been. They might have to be because they've been decimated. But so I'm wondering if are the people we're speaking to, will they hold, assuming that they're men of some reason.
When we come back, we have about a minute or 40 seconds or so, Bill, before the break in our last segment. I want to take a look at the media, because what's really bothering me from a media perspective is the media love to talk about religion when it suits their agenda. Did they say anything about the recent report that came out from the Justice Department about how the previous administration targeted pro-lifers in some cases for years and misused the FACE Act? As a huge report that the FBI put out. And the Hoke family was, of course, at the top of that list. There's a big story that they want a settlement. EWTN News has that report. And yet, where are the media when the Pope speaks up about abortion? They don't cover that. But because this fits their agenda now, they're all over it, and they're clutching their pearls over all of this because faith is being attacked, as if they care about it. More with Bill Donahue when we come back. Check out the great work of Bill Donahue and the Catholic League, catholicleague.org, including his numerous books. He's written so many books. He is an author, speaker, also an expert on Catholicism, and also a sociologist. His latest book is excellent. I was proud to endorse it. All the books are great, but Christianity in the Crosshairs, Ruling Class and Radicals Finding a Common Enemy. You will see the first book up there when you go to catholicleague.org and click on the book section. Okay, so you know me with my media background. I'm watching all of this, and I'm thinking, okay, yes, this is a story, what's going on back and forth between the Vatican and the president, obviously. But they seem so concerned about religion and the attack on religion, and they're clutching their pearls. Isn't this horrible? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what do you have to say when the Pope comes out against abortion, as he has done since he's been elected last year, more than once? And what about his talk about the attack on the family and marriage? Didn't say anything about that. They weren't, clutching their pearls over those issues. It's so obvious. And it's like, okay, here we go again. The same message. They're all for religion when they think it's going to promote their agenda.
Yeah, and I don't think it's working. I think, quite frankly, that's a tired refrain. What they're doing, we were told for years that we had too many Catholics on the Supreme Court. I just read an article by USA Today here about a week ago, saying that the Catholics on the Supreme Court need to become more Catholic in taking the positions aligning with Leo on the war. No, I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, when it comes to same-sex marriage and it comes to transgenderism and the like and abortion, we're too Catholic, and then we have to be quiet. We're interfering in public affairs. But now we're not interfering enough in public affairs. We need to be lecturing Trump on what to do every day. I mean, it's not. They don't paint it quite that black and white, but that's the gist of what they're doing. Yeah, we know there's selective interest in Catholicism. As long as it fits their own political ideology, then we have to be very Catholic. Otherwise, forget it. They liked the previous guy who was in there, Joe Biden, as a devout Catholic. They liked him a lot because he disagreed with the Catholic Church on virtually every matter of marriage, the family, and sexuality. And now you have a different situation. Yeah, I mean, there's no consistency here. They're not guided by principle. It's all politics.
Right. So where do you think we go from here in terms of this lack of dialogue and these bows being shot back and forth across the pond? Bill, what do you think?
Well, I think if I had to recommend one word to both of them, it would be restraint. Mm-hmm. All right? Mm-hmm. They've got enough problems within the church and within this country for the Pope and the President to be taking shots at each other. There could be disagreements. Fine, let them be disagreements. But there has to be some degree of decorum. And unfortunately, with Trump, his abrasive style does rub so many people the wrong way. He's a narcissist. He can't be told anything. And he's hurting himself when he does this. On the other hand, the Vatican and the bishops in this country have to understand 55% of Catholics in this country voted for Trump. And they voted for him because they were fed up with the mass deportations. And he is the commander-in-chief, and they hope and pray that he can bring this to a conclusion. But I don't like anything that smacks of moral equivalency. We have to be on the side of Israel, not on the side of Iran, and that has to be made crystal clear from the very beginning. Otherwise, I think the argument is lost.
So how do we continue what we said earlier? You addressed this, but I just kind of want to reiterate this because it can be pretty confusing and overwhelming for people, Catholics who are obviously faithful to the magisterium as we are and as we teach about the faith. But, how do we respond to this situation? Because we can disagree on this war issue. It is a prudential matter.
Well, that's exactly it. We're not talking here about the virgin birth or something like that. These things are open for discussion. Well, read the various sides on it. There's no question. There's a lot up there on the internet written by a more liberal Catholic progressive community, so to speak, that would take the side of Leo on this. Then you've got others like Jerry Murray listening to EWTN, your show. Look at the Catholic League website, many, many others. A lot of good material out there. And you'll just have to make your own mature, seasoned judgment. But and at the end of the day, you shouldn't come to be paralyzed over this. You have to make a conclusion at some point, because if moral equivalency is the way we're going to go, then everybody who starts a war and everybody who defends himself are going to be regarded on the same plane. I think that's immoral, and I think pacifism is immoral, because pacifism means that you will never defend yourself or your nation against anyone for any reason, even when you could save innocent people, non-combatants. That, to me, is an immoral conclusion. I'm very proud of the fact that the Catholic Church understands just war. We may disagree as to whether the criteria apply here and there, but we're not a pacifist religion. Pacifists believe in surrender. They don't believe in peace. Don't tell me as a veteran. They believe in surrender.
One thing that's frustrating is those who are against it, whether Republican, Democrat, Independent, whomever, or anyone in the church, I don't see an alternate plan that anyone else has put forward in terms of how to deal with Iran. They have been a constant threat almost 50 years now.
Well, let me be very specific on this. During the 60-minute conversation, Cardinal McElroy out of Washington, D.C., said that Iran has an abominable administration and that we need a regime change. Okay. How are you going to do it?
Right.
Who's going to do it? You're going to talk to them again? Is there ever an expiration date on the talking? Because they're continuing to build the uranium. They're continuing to build nuclear weapons. So if you want a regime change and you have an abominable administration who threatens to kill their neighbors, including their own Arab brothers, then how do you get rid of it? Through talk. Sometimes you have to go to war. We did it in other wars, and sometimes war is the only way you bring about the peace. That's one of the great ironies and paradoxes of history, but it happens to be a true thing. That is the truth. And thank God we have a military which is as willing to fight and protect people. I'm very glad the Vatican has extra security these days, and they built up higher walls a few years ago to protect themselves. They should be just as generous toward Americans who feel the same way.
I want to go back to the report that you had, your piece, Bill, on your website. By the way, of course, having a very important conversation with our dear friend, Bill Donahue from the Catholic League, catholicleague.org, talking about that piece in the Free Press. I told you when we were chatting via email, I was very disappointed because they've done some pretty good stuff, as you said. The first time I read that report about this meeting between the Vatican and representatives of the Trump administration, I thought, okay, this is too bizarre. This did not happen. I understand that there are different sides of the issue and could be far apart, but it just sounded way too strange to me to be true. And it turned out that it wasn't, that both the Vatican and the administration, that the media completely exaggerated and took so much out of context. What did you find out?
Well, we did some scratching on this, and we found out that there was culpability on the part of the Free Press, which has done, generally speaking, some pretty good work. But the particular author has had a penchant for trying to pit MAGA and the president and the Vatican against each other, taking the side of the Vatican. And so I think this was hyperbole driven by politics, that the United States was threatening military action against the Vatican. I mean, I think too many people have been, I don't know what they've been drinking or smoking. That's simply irresponsible, reckless journalism. And then you had Christopher Hale, who's a known left-wing Catholic who has tried to destroy the Catholic Church from within. I'm being very specific now. Go back to 2016, look at Licky Weeks, Catholics and the Common Good. I fought them for years. They're no longer around. John Podesta admitted that he set up these dummy Catholic organizations to create confusion and even a silent spring, a revolution within the Catholic Church. Christopher Hale was one of those people. He's not to be trusted. And so when you get people like Hale and some people at Free Press, I don't care where they are, trying to gin things up between the Vatican and the presidency, that's really irresponsible. I wouldn't expect anything different from Hale. I was disappointed in the Free Press.
I want to read the two paragraphs in case people aren't familiar with this story. On April 8th, the Free Press, this is from your piece on the CatholicLeague.org, the Free Press reported on an allegedly tense and confrontational meeting between representatives in the Vatican and the Trump administration. The meeting quickly became hostile, so said the anonymous sources cited for the article. That's always a problem to me as a journalist, anonymous sources. Allegedly, the papal nuncio to the U.S. was given a, quote, bitter lecture warning that the U.S. has a military power to do whatever it wants and that the Church had better take its side. The Free Press noting that as tensions escalated, one U.S. official went so far as to invoke the Avignon papacy, the period in the 1300s when the French crown leveraged its military power to dominate the papal authority. The reporter said this came from anonymous sources. Again, he is the author of numerous articles that pit the Vatican and the Department of War against each other. His claims on his blog that unnamed Vatican officials told him they saw the reference to Avignon papacy as a threat to use military force against the Holy See. He is so radical that even the far left and anti-Catholic National Catholic Reporter notes that Hale's activities on his blog are partisan wish-casting and a crude effort to co-opt the papacy to fit into a progressive political agenda. I mean, just these statements are so ridiculous but the problem is, Bill, so many people don't understand still in this day and age, with all the problems we have in the media, that there is a huge agenda among some reporters, many reporters.
Well, that's exactly right, and shame on the Free Press for taking debate and going along with this. They need to get better editors before they would put out trash like this. Hale, I wouldn't expect anything different. He's a left-wing hack. He poses as a Catholic trying to undermine the Catholic Church. I've dealt with him. I've debated him. I know all about this guy. I could go on with him for hours. And if he wants to debate me on any show, let him do it again. After I've dealt with him before, I don't think he'll come back. But he's not to be trusted. The Free Press needs to grow up and stop looking to make a name for itself. It does have a good name. So why is it sullying itself with articles like this? This is not a good moment for it. But it'll get back on its feet, you know.
Well, the Free Press, as you pointed out in your piece, did back off. But I was disappointed because the whole reason the Free Press was started was because of the bias of the New York Times. When the editor left and started the Free Press, now she's with CBS News. But they were doing some really good stuff. And this is just so sensational, so out there. I mean, come on. It just, I saw it and I said, this is fake. This is fake. And this report, and I'm telling you what, I even wonder if there were anonymous sources in this, Bill. That's how bad this is.
Well, that's just it. And as you say, you got to be very careful when you get that, particularly when the anonymous source is giving you something which is incendiary.
Right.
That should be the red flag. If he's giving you something which is an interesting tidbit about this guy sat across from so-and-so and he was rolling his eyes, that's one thing. But when you get into something like this where you say that we're threatening military action against the Vatican, and that's from an anonymous source, I mean, if you don't see that as a red flag, then you shouldn't be in this business of journalism.
Right. Right. But again, I can remember, and this is going back, of course, I'm on the air now for 45 years. I remember going back to J school, and my professor, Professor Bradshaw, who was an old curmudgeon who worked for the old AP for years, we were always told anonymous sources, and even the Poynter Institute talks about, you don't use anonymous sources unless it's absolutely necessary. It's a last resort, and only to protect those who are giving, very serious information. They use anonymous sources all over the place now.
Well, not only that, but then we have another problem. As I think it was Michael Goodwin who pointed out, there could be a federal crime involved. Maggie Haberman and some male reporter, they were in the room where all these things were being discussed about going to war, and they were able to say who was sitting next to whom and whatnot. And that book is coming out in June.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, who gave them that information?
Right.
Who had the pictures?
Right.
So, there are leakers and leakers. I mean, you just have to keep reading. And you asked before, what are Catholics supposed to do? You just have to keep reading until you begin to learn. Some people are simply going off the charts. Every day when we meet here in the morning, I talk about some notable who I can't believe what he's just said. Mm-hmm. Too many people are just reaching for the ring at the top. I think it's driven by ego. I really do.
Right.
A lot of people who I
pride.
used to respect, I don't respect anymore.
Yep. And they want to get the clicks, and they want to insert themselves into a story that's getting all kinds of clicks and headlines and exposure. And it's just very sad to me, and it's very sad in terms of the state of journalism that we have in this country and in this world. Bill, great discussion, and look forward to having you on again. I knew this hour would fly by. Thank you so much for spending extra time with us.
Thank you. You're the best.
Well, you are the best. All right, so what's the next piece you're working on? What should we look for?
One of the things I love about
Who
this
knows,
job
right?
Is that I did peruse a 375-page report that came out on racial equity under Zoran Mandani, and he makes this out to be the most racist country in the history of the world.
Oh, we have to have you back on to talk about that.
Oh, I know this subject well. I'm going to lace
All
this
right,
guy.
well, we'll schedule you, my dear friend. Thank you so much. Check out thecatholicleague.org. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning in to hour number 2 here on EWTN's Radio Extra, Catholic Connection and EWTN production. Really love talking to Bill Donahue. I think he is just so fair in the way he approaches issues. And he gets us to think that we have to look things up and we have to read a variety of different sources and understand what the church is teaching about these issues. And all at the same time, obviously respect our Holy Father, the Vicar of Christ, and always follow the teachings of the church, the magisterium. But know what they are in terms of, especially when you talk about something like a just war. I'm eager to finish the piece that Father Gerald Murray, of course, is a regular on EWTN, especially with our own Raymond Arroyo, on what he had to say about that, which is actually published in the Free Press on their website online. So check that out. The Free Press has a story that was written actually by Father Gerald Murray on just war theory. Coming up tomorrow, I'm sure Father Mitch Pacwa will have a lot to say about the ongoing situation that's developing in the Middle East. We check up with him for Cultural Connections, 2 segments, and then a beautiful book on the sufferings of the Holy Family. We'll be chatting with Father Sebastian Walsh. He'll join us as well. So it should be another great program. Hope you can stay tuned tomorrow for both hours of Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio and, of course, Radio Extra. And don't forget to stay tuned to all of our great radio programs all day long. And, of course, check things out online, EWTN.com. We're also keeping an eye on the weather for you. Lots of storms moving through, so be safe out there. Again, coming up tomorrow, the one, the only Father Mitch Pacwa and Father Sebastian Walsh. Have a great Wednesday. Talk to you on a Thursday. Ciao, ciao.